Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to our first look for Wild Rift patch 4.3b. This is a new patch they'll be releasing this week to Wild Rift. So very excited to give you all this first look for the new patch. There's a lot of changes. There's 2 pages in total that we'll be going through for these first look images. And the cool thing is that all of these changes are buffs, except for one nerf which is to a rune, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But all the champion changes are all buffs, so very excited to see if some of these champions sneak into the meta with these buffs. I got lucky enough to get sent this image. Again, big thanks to Riot for sending me out this image so I could give you all this content first before anyone else, and I can give you all my opinions about the new patch. Obviously this is a bit of a different time schedule. Normally these first looks come out on Friday, but now they'll be releasing on Monday, the week of the patch. So even though it's a bit closer to the patch notes, it's still cool to get this first look to give you all a bit of a teaser of what's up and coming for the changes for Wild Rift. So let's head straight into it. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Wild Rift content coming very soon. Right, champion buffs. Let's get into this. Like I said, 2 pages of this in total. So it's going to be a lot to get through. Aatrox. So nothing too crazy is actually happening to Aatrox. You might think Aatrox is getting another buff. What's going on? Aatrox is completely busted in the jungle. I think he's one of the best junglers to play right now in Wild Rift. In terms of Baron lane, I still think he's strong. I don't think he needed these buffs at all. If anything, I think Aatrox kind of needed a nerf in the jungle, but hey, that's just my opinion. But he is getting a bit of a healing effect buff to hitting minions. This was quite low anyway, so I understand this. So giving you a bit more sustain when playing Aatrox in the Baron lane, which is quite nice. And also the damage ratio to minions also going up by 10% on the first ability. So you'll be able to wave clear a bit quicker, heal up a bit more from minions, which means they're trying to push Aatrox more into the Baron lane than the jungle, but they're trying to not change his stats overall in terms of like his damage or healing or anything like that. Because I think the most recent Aatrox change was to his ultimate. They increased the AD ratio or something, or they increased the healing. Can't remember what exactly. But this would be really nice for Aatrox in the Baron lane. I still think he was strong even before these changes, so this just makes him even stronger. Again, as I mentioned, wave clear is going to be a lot quicker. You're going to be able to kill minions quicker, and also you're going to get a little bit of healing, so you don't have to focus too much on auto-attacking champions with your passive. You can auto-attack minions and sustain during the laning phase, which is going to be quite nice for Aatrox. Akali, the passive, so moving towards the outside of the ring of energy grants you bonus movement speed, which is now scaling, and then exiting the ring of energy towards enemy champions grants you also scaling movement speed. So both these movement speeds are scaling now on the passive, which is quite nice. If you don't know how this works, basically every single time Akali lands an ability, there's like a ring that goes around her. You can exit the ring to enhance your next auto attack. So this is just like, you know, moving towards the outside of the ring gives you more bonus movement speed, which means you'll be able to get to that point a lot quicker. You'll be able to exit the ring a lot quicker to get your auto attacks down from your passive, and then exit the ring of energy towards an enemy champion grants you bonus movement speed. So again, you get even more scaling movement speed, which is quite interesting. They're giving Akali more movement speed to make her pretty much more mobile, I guess, in a way. Even though she is very mobile already, she has a second ability which allows her to turn invisible in that mist. She has her third ability which can dash, and she also has her ultimate. So she actually has plenty of ways to be able to be mobile during team fights, and this just helps on top of that with the bonus movement speed that you'll be getting now from your passive, which you're going to be proccing pretty much all the time during team fights. You need to make sure with Akali, when you land your abilities, when you hit enemy champions, that you exit that ring to be able to enhance your next auto attack, to deal more damage with your next auto attack, which is super important because it also allows you to restore energy as well in general. Speaking of energy and consumption of energy in general, the first point strike, the first ability, which gives you out that, you know, little ray of daggers. The energy consumption in the early game is going down by 15, 10, and then 5, and staying the same at maximum rank. So it's going to help Akali out a lot during the laning phase. Means you can kind of spam this ability more often during the laning phase. It's not normally that bad to use this ability as much as you want to, because you don't have mana to worry about, and energy restores quite quickly. But sometimes when you use this ability over and over again, you do run out of energy quite quickly, so you can't use your third ability or second ability or anything like that. This just allows you to have the potential of using your other abilities on top of your first ability, and not just relying on just your first ability to be able to, you know, just wave clear. Maybe you can look for trades during the laning phase, because even though it's just an energy consumption thing, this is pretty big, as I mentioned, because you're going to have 15 less energy now to be able to kind of worry about in a way for using Akali's first ability. So you can use that 15 energy to use your second ability or even your third ability instead to do, you know, a little bit more during the laning phase, which is going to be quite nice for Akali. Akshan, interesting buff. His AD per level is going up by 1. So you're going to get 15 extra AD at level 15, which is pretty insane, to be honest with you. Akshan's a weird one. Akshan in dual lane is awful. You never want to play Akshan in dual lane, just because you can never really do too well with his kit, and you can't really do too much with his kit, because, you know, Akshan is more to do with being able to trade, being able to auto attack, being able to swing in and take trades. But the problem is, when you try and swing in or take trades with your passive, you're just going to lose the trade every single time, because you're going to have a support by your side, but also the enemy's going to have a support. So you have very low attack range. You're going to be walking up to try and auto attack. But if you're against like a Thresh or a Leona, you're just going to get caught every single time. And most of the time you lose the trades down in dual lane. So that's why Akshan most of the time gets played in the mid lane. So attack per level is going to be quite nice. And then the ultimate, it looks like the base damage, not the percentage of attack damage, but the base damage in general is going up. So the minimum and maximum damage is going up. Not at level 1. At level 2 it's going up by a little bit, by 5 for the minimum damage, 20 for the maximum damage. And then at level 3 is really where it goes up, you know, 10 for the minimum damage and then 40 for the maximum damage. So you're going to be able to do quite a lot more now with your ultimate. And again, you don't have to rely too much on your attack damage percentage, because that has not gone up, but still 40% of your attack damage is still quite nice to deal more damage with your ultimate. Most of the time your ultimate is used as like an execute ability more than anything else. You don't really use it at the start of fights or anything like that, or you don't really use it during team fights. You normally use it right at the end to try and finish off an enemy champion. So quite nice changes here for Akshan. Like I said, I think he's okay in the mid lane. I don't think he's the best, but he's all right in the mid lane. So these changes will definitely help Akshan a bit. Fiora, this is a cool one. Lunge, her first ability, will now damage enemy towers. This is pretty cool because you have things like Demolish in the game right now, which allows you to take towers super quickly. For not just champions like Fiora, for like Irelia, Baron lane, Camille, Jax, you know, all these champions that love to split push. But now Fiora is going to have an extra way of being able to be able to proc, you know, lunge and be able to deal damage to the tower. And this is also going to be pretty good, because I'm pretty sure this is also going to activate the Sheen passive as well. So not only is you going to do damage with your first ability to towers, but also this should activate your passive from your Sheen. So that's going to deal even more damage to tower. So I think Fiora is going to be a crazy split push machine in the next patch. Not only with this, but also with how fast she clears towers anyway. You know, you can go for Trinity Force, Hullbreaker, Blades of Rune King, go for that crazy high burst damage build and go for Hullbreaker to be able to split push. And now your first ability, you can kind of reset your auto attack in a way. You can use your first ability to proc Sheen and take towers super quickly. I think it's going to be very nice for Fiora, and it's going to be pretty nice changes. I think this is going to be really nice and feel really good for Fiora. We'll definitely have to test it out during the next patch. Irelia's second ability, which is her damage reduction ability, which just basically makes her stand still, take damage reduction, and shoots out blades to deal a little bit of damage. The damage reduction, the base value is going up by 10, which is not really too much, to be honest with you. Just goes from 50 up to 60. Still scales with ability power, which Irelia doesn't build anyway, but still base damage reduction, always quite nice. And the base damage is going up by a little bit during the early game and actually going down during the late game. Most of the time you don't really use this ability too often, to be honest with you. Obviously if you have like crowd control that's coming your way and you can't dodge it, then you're going to use it to just take reduced damage. Sometimes you could use it to deal a little bit of damage and try and get, you know, resets for your first ability as well. There are ways that you could do that if you really want to, but like I said, most of the time this is just, you know, used as like a wave clear tool. You can use your second ability to deal damage to minions, and then you can get resets on your first ability and just clear the wave super quickly. Other than that, doesn't really get used a lot during team fights, as I mentioned, unless you're going to be taking a lot of damage. I don't think it's going to change too much for Irelia. I still think Irelia is pretty decent. Jungle, mid lane, top lane Irelia. I think Irelia is in a pretty decent spot already. So some decent changes. Maybe it might make you use the ability more often. Maybe that's what they're kind of trying to get towards for that. Jarvan is getting some pretty cool buffs this patch. I'm actually kind of excited for these Jarvan changes, not only for Jarvan jungle, but also Jarvan support. Low-key, Jarvan support could still work. You know, it was the thing in PC League, and it probably could still work in Wild Rift just because of how important team fights and how aggressive the bot lane duos are at the moment. With so many enchanters, you know, you could be super aggressive with Jarvan. So the passives, so the cooldown of acting on the same target goes from 6 seconds down to 5 seconds. So if you don't know from your passive, every single time you're auto attacking a different target, you're going to be dealing extra damage, but there's a 6-second timer where you have to wait 6 seconds and then you can proc your passive on that same target. Now you only have to wait 5 seconds. So a little bit time reduction for that. This will actually help, might help his jungle clear a little bit. You can just keep auto attacking different raptors or different Krugs, anything like that, different walls, and you'll be able to deal the extra little bit of damage. And then you only have to wait 5 seconds now instead of 6 seconds, so it might help your jungle clear a little bit. This is a big one. Golden Aegis, the base shield value is now going to be scaling with maximum health, and this is also going to come hand in hand with the Cataclysm change as well. So what does this mean for Jarvan? So Jarvan at the moment, some players are building Jarvan like full lethality, full damage, you know, going for first strike or electrocute, building full lethality items like Ghost Blade, Serpent's Fang, Lord Dominic's Regards, you know, items like that. Mortal Reminder, just going full damage, and your Cataclysm and your abilities actually do quite a lot of damage. But with this, players might try and go towards more Bruiser or more tank Jarvan. I mean, I think Bruiser / Fighter Jarvan is still really good. You know, if you go Black Cleaver, Sterix Gauge into Twin God, for example, I think that's still a really good build for Jarvan, and it's going to be even stronger in the next patch because your shield now from your second ability is going to scale with 4% of your maximum health. So you're going to get more of a shielding now, which is going to help you a lot. And as I mentioned, with the Cataclysm now, so as you can see there, damage from enemies is reduced by 12, 16, and 20% when inside Cataclysm. And the effect will be removed when leaving Cataclysm, or if the barrier surrounding the terrain collapses. This is pretty insane, to be honest with you. So this even means I'm wondering if this is going to, I wonder if this is just towards Jarvan, or if this is towards the rest of your team as well. Since this damage from enemies is reduced by a certain amount whilst inside Cataclysm. So I think it's just to anything at all. So if you use Cataclysm, if you trap a AD carry inside Cataclysm, say for example they're just ignoring the Jarvan, they're auto attacking the Xayah, which is outside of the Cataclysm, I'm guessing they're still going to do reduced damage. I don't think it's just towards Jarvan inside the Cataclysm, because it just says damage from enemies is reduced by a certain percentage inside Cataclysm. Or maybe the enemy, maybe the ally has to be inside Cataclysm as well. Interesting. It doesn't really explain it too well. We'll have to see how it goes, but still really big change for Jarvan. I think damage reduction in general, we've seen how strong it's been already with Glacial Augment. Glacial Augment damage reduction is completely insane right now. And it's going to be the same with Jarvan. I think Jarvan is going to be a really strong jungler in the next patch, and he's going to be super strong to play, not only with his ultimate, but also his second ability changes, being able to scale with maximum health. Like I said, I think Bruiser Jarvan might come back into it instead of going for like full lethality Jarvan, because full lethality Jarvan, you don't really do too much with your ultimate. You just use your ultimate, and normally your ultimate deals enough damage that you can one-shot someone. So yeah, very interesting. Jace, some new changes to Jace. There's quite a few changes here to Jace, to be honest with you. The base attack damage is going up to give Jace a little bit more power in the early game. This is mainly because as well they're also reducing the damage to monsters for the second ability. So the second ability in range form is the one that auto attacks really, really quickly, or the one that does AoE damage. So the damage ratio to monsters is now 17%, not 100%. So it's going down by 30% damage. So that's why you're probably getting a little bit of a base AD value. It's going to help, you know, Jason in the lane as well at the same time, which is going to be pretty nice. So the third ability, oh, sorry, this is just hammer stance. This is just hammer stance. So actually it doesn't reduce the damage of your range form. It just reduces the damage of your melee form. So that AoE ability from hammer stance. The third ability, hammer stance as well, which is the one where you can knock someone away. The damage ratio is going up based on the target's maximum health, and the bonus attack damage is staying the same. Okay, interesting. Maximum damage to monsters is going down though. Okay, so it looks like they're definitely moving Jace they're trying to move Jace away from the jungle and more towards, you know, mid lane and solo lane, because they're increasing the damage of abilities overall. And they're, you know, they're basically increasing the damage ratio based on the target's maximum health, but they're also reducing the damage to monsters. You know, same with the second ability, and exactly the same with the third ability. So they're reducing the damage to monsters a lot, which is kind of crazy. There's two abilities here that are going to be dealing less damage to monsters in the jungle. So maybe Jace's jungle here is not going to be as strong as what it was before. Gain bonus armor and magic resist in hammer stance. Oh, it now scales with bonus attack damage. Okay, that's interesting. So when you go into hammer stance, you gain bonus armor and magic resistance, which before was just like 3+2 times your level. So the more level, the more you're going to get. So it's like 2 times your level and then you +3. But now it's also going to be +9% of your bonus attack damage. So the more attack damage that you're going to be building, the more armor and magic resist that you're going to be getting in hammer stance, which is kind of crazy actually if you think about it. So you're building damage, but you're also getting resistances at the same time. So I think that's going to be very, very interesting for Jace. I think Jace is, you know, pretty decent already in like mid lane or top lane. He's pretty decent in jungle as well. This might bring his jungle down a little bit, but he's going to be even more powerful now, especially with you getting armor and magic resist when going into you know, hammer stance and now scaling with your bonus attack damage. Jace already builds a lot of bonus attack damage, you know, Ghost Blade, Man Immune, Serpent's Fang, Edge of Night, Guardian Angel, you know, all these items, Serrader's Grudge. There's so many items that you're building that give you bonus attack damage. So it's going to actually allow Jace to trade a lot more during the laning phase, and also jump in a lot more freely during team fights, which is pretty big for Jace, especially with first strike as well, because first strike with Jace, you could easily proc first strike with using your shot blast acceleration gate in range form, but then you're kind of a little bit worried to jump into melee form and deal that little bit of extra true damage with first strike and get that little bit of extra gold. But now with you gaining more armor and more magic resistance, maybe you don't have to be as worried anymore. So you're going to be dealing damage anyway, because you're going to be building attack damage, and you're going to be gaining bonus armor and magic resist now, which is happy days. You know, can't complain. Karma. Now, with obviously Lux and Soraka being so strong at the moment, Karma has definitely fallen out of favor a little bit, especially in the support role. Mid lane as well, obviously moved down a little bit in my tier list for both mid lane and support. And I guess Riot have also realized that as well. So they're giving Karma a little bit more damage. We're going to be dealing a little bit more base damage with our first ability, and also the mantra bonus is also going to be dealing a little bit more base damage, which is going to be quite nice. And the shield value, this is actually pretty big. The shield value on the third ability has gone up by quite a lot. You can see that both the mantra and the normal shield value go up by 15% of your ability power. And also the base value is going up by 20 in the mantra version and 10 for the normal version, for normal shield value. This is pretty big for Karma support. Karma support doesn't really build support items anyway, you know, like Starflow Flowing Water, Ardent, and things like that. And I don't think that will change, because Karma is a more carry support, in my opinion, with building items like Luna's Echo, Death Cap, Imperial Mandate being able to deal a lot of damage. But now with the AP ratio also going up on the shield value on third ability is not only going to give you a lot more protection if you play mid lane Karma, but also you can give shield over to an ally or something, and that's also going to give you a lot more value. So pretty big for Karma. These are some pretty nice changes. Might bring her back into the meta. We'll definitely have to wait and see about that one. Onto page number 2. I told you there was a lot of changes. Onto page number 2. We got Misfortune. The base armor for Misfortune is going up, and also her armor per level is going up. So you're going to be getting about 7 more armor at level 15 now, which doesn't really mean too much, but base armor in the early game is also quite nice. This is mainly because the problem with Misfortune right now is one of her main damaging abilities, her ultimate, she's very vulnerable when she's using it because she has to stand still. It's kind of different when you're playing someone like Jhin. Even though you're standing still with Jin's ultimate, you can use it from so far away. Misfortune's very different. You still have to get very up close and personal with Misfortune to be able to use her ultimates and use it to, full effect, which makes it, very difficult to be able to use, Misfortune's ultimate very effectively. Because if you use your ultimate, then everyone's just going to jump on you very easily, like the assassins and the bruisers, and you're going to be taking a lot of damage. So her getting base armor and armor per level is maybe going to help her a little bit when she is vulnerable and standing still. Maybe she's going to be a little bit more tankier now, which is quite nice. The double up, the critical hit damage after doubling up, the damage actually is going down earlier on, but it's going up to 160% now. So the critical hit damage now for your first ability is going up by 10% when you reach level 4, but it's going down a little bit in the early game, so you're not going to be dealing as much damage in the early game. But to be honest, you don't really build that much crit damage in the early game anyway with Misfortune. You're going Essence Reaver as the first item anyway, which is still going to be giving you a lot of extra damage because your first ability is going to be able to bounce with the Essence Reaver proc, which is going to be very nice for Misfortune. This is just going to help Misfortune a little bit, I think, with scaling crit, because you're probably going to go for something like Essence Reaver Collector, Infinity Edge. You're going to be building a lot of crit later on anyway, and your crit damage is going to deal more damage when Misfortune reaches level 4 on her first ability. So not that much less damage in the early game, to be honest with you. If you get lucky with a crit, then maybe you're not going to deal as much damage. But as I mentioned, you're never really going to be dealing crit damage in the early game anyway for like the 130 and the 140 mark. Then 150 is going to be the same anyway. And it's just when you hit level 4, that's really where you're going to be maybe hitting like 2 items and might be, fairly strong. And then you have a new passive for Misfortune's second ability. Now, even though it says new, it's kind of basically changed, but it's only changed ever so slightly. I actually have the full patch notes on my other screen, but I can't show you that just yet. So you have basically the only thing that's really changing is that Misfortune now only doesn't need to take damage for 4 seconds instead of 5 seconds. So at the moment, Misfortune needs to take no damage for 5 seconds to be able to get the extra movement speed from the second ability. Now it's only 4 seconds, so you'll be able to get the movement speed more often when you're out of combat, which is quite nice. The bonus movement speed is the same. The gain bonus 25 movement speed is the same. But now it says, so before it says, then 5 seconds later, you gain bonus increased movement speed. So now after 3 seconds, you now gain even more bonus increased movement speed. So the value before was 60, 70, 80, 90. Now it's 80, 85, 90, 95. So Misfortune is actually going to be speeding through the map. Honestly, this is absolutely crazy. So not only do you need to be out of combat now for 1 less second to be able to get the bonus movement speed, which is the exact same. Now it's only 3 seconds later instead of 5 seconds later. You'll be able to get even more increased bonus movement speed, which is 80, 85, 90, 95. 80 movement speed is a lot, by the way. That is quite a lot. So that's going to be really nice for Misfortune to be able to just reposition during fights, try and get into a good position for using her ultimate, for example, which is going to be really good. And on top of that, you're also going to be getting bonus attack speed now with your second ability when you activate it. So instead of going 30, 50, 70, 90, it's now 45. So 15 increase, 10 increase, 5% increase, and then the same at maximum rank. So going to be giving Misfortune a little bit more attack speed during the early game, which is actually really nice for her, to be honest, because you're not really building, you don't really need attack damage items with Misfortune anyway. And this just makes it that you pretty much don't need any attack speed items anymore anyway, because you're going to be getting a crazy amount of attack speed with your second ability, which is going to be really nice for trying to reset your passive, attacking different enemy champions. So yeah, some really nice changes for Miss Fortune overall. Armor increase to make her a little bit more tankier, a little bit more crit damage in the late game for her first ability, and also more movement speed and more attack speed with her second ability. So overall, some really nice buffs for Miss Fortune that we'll definitely have to try out and see what she is like. Pyke, some more buffs to Pyke. They're basically just getting rid. It's so weird actually, because they announced that they wanted to make Pyke into different roles, like jungle, for example, mid lane, etc. Now they're just completely gutting it. Now they're just like, okay, we've had our fun with Pyke mid lane, we've had our fun with Pyke jungle, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to make Pyke more of a support. So now they're just lowering the values of minion and monster damage across the board, but they're giving Pyke more base damage value. So yeah, attack damage per level going up by 1 every single rank, so you're going to be getting about 15 AD at level 15. Bonus skill with the first ability, the base damage is going up by 10 at every single rank, but as I mentioned, the damage to minions and also damage to monsters is getting lowered. So again, probably no more mid lane Pyke, no more jungle Pyke, to be honest with you, because a 50% damage nerf is pretty damn crazy. Base damage on third ability, again, the base damage is going up, the stun duration is actually going up, which is going to be really big, I think, for Pyke. And actually 0.25 seconds for the stun duration on the third ability gives you a little bit more time to charge your first ability, or for the rest of your team to be able to follow up, which is kind of nice. But again, look at that damage ratio to monsters going down by 50%. So they're basically saying, don't play Pyke jungle anymore. To be fair, I might just remove it from the build completely, because I don't think no one will play it anymore. It's like, let's just completely remove Pyke jungle, but let's give him more base value stats. So, I mean, overall, it's pretty nice. You know, attack damage per level buff, base damage on first ability, base damage on third ability, stun duration on third ability. This is pretty nice changes for Pyke. For a champion that already has a lot of carry potential in the support role, especially when you're roaming around. Pyke is one of the best roaming supports to play. So you're roaming around, you're trying to secure kills across the map, and it's going to give you even more damage, you know, even more damage bonuses. So it's going to be pretty nice to see how Pyke's going to perform in the new patch, sorry. But again, minion damage lowered, monster damage lowered. So yeah, kind of crazy with that. Riven, the passive now only deals 50% damage to monsters. Again, there's a lot of champions, it seems like, right, are just trying to get rid of the inner jungle. No more Pyke jungle, no more Riven jungle, no more Jace jungle. They just don't want these junglers anymore for some reason, which is, I guess, okay. I mean, they have kind of made up for it in a way. So even though your passive doesn't deal as much damage to monsters, your first ability now does more percent attack damage, and your cooldown of your third ability has also been lowered. Which is pretty big. This was actually a buff that they did before, I'm pretty sure, and then Riven actually became completely broken, because you'd be able to just use this as so many times because of how much ability haste that you build with Riven anyway, you know, with items like Black Cleaver, for example. And the Broken Wind's attack damage ratio is kind of scary as well. So it's the base value. Okay, so this is actually confusing. I just saw the plus in the middle here. So the base value is actually going up. You can see here. So this is the base value. So 15, 40, 65, 90 is going up to 20, 45, 70, 95. And also the attack damage ratio is also going up by 5%. So not only are they giving you base value damage, which is pretty scary for Riven in like Baron Lane, for example, they're also giving you attack damage bonus. So pretty nice. I think it's actually really nice for Riven. Yeah, pretty crazy, pretty nice. And then, like I said, with the third ability being buffed again, Riven might be in a really strong spot, especially in the Baron lane, because you can take trades early game, deal a lot more damage with your first ability, and your passive hasn't really changed. It's just to monsters, which is pretty nice. Sion, the base damage of his third ability, and also how much mana his third ability costs has gone down. Base damage going up on the third ability doesn't really do too much. That's mainly just for wave clearing, to be honest with you. Unless you do this cool thing with Sion that you can do, where you can use your third ability on a minion and hit an enemy champion to slow them and deal damage to them. You could do that to do a little bit of poke damage, but most of the time your third ability just gets used for wave clearing in general. You can still use this, you know, to be able to combo. You can use your ultimate into your third ability to be able to slow enemies and they basically secure the damage of your first ability. So there's different ways ways that you can use it to damage enemy champions, but most of the time you use your third ability to just clear the wave. So some nice buffs there to Scion. Then we only have 2 rune changes. No nerfs to first strike, as you can see. No nerfs to first strike. It's surprisingly, they're buffing Mark of the Week, which I'm actually very surprised about, because I honestly think the Mark of the Week is better than Cheap Shot, which, yes, Cheap Shot, you deal true damage, but the value is so low, and Mark of the Week actually gives you so much damage to, gives so much damage to assassins, and gives so much damage to just mages in general as well, because Mark of the Week doesn't only increase your damage, you have to remember, it also increases your allies damage to that champion when using abilities. So I think Mark of the Week is definitely going to be the go-to now for pretty much every single mage and assassin or anyone that goes through that domination tree, because I don't think Cheap Shot is that great anyway. It was decent in the early game, but didn't really scale as much, which Mark of the Week does. And then they're nerfing Glacial Augment, which is no surprise, really. I think Glacial Augment is completely busted with First Strike. I think Glacial Augment and First Strike are both really busted right now. So yeah, I'm surprised that First Strike didn't get nerfed. I'm not surprised that, you know, Glacial Augment got nerfed. So you can see here the slow effects around the slow zone. So slow in general now is, it was 2% of your bonus health. Plus 20%, but now it's only plus only 1.5% of your bonus health, which, to be honest with you, thinking about it now, even champions like Lux, Pike, Janna, you know, these champions were still building Glacial Augment, and it also doesn't really build maximum health. So I actually don't think this really does too much to them supports in general. It's like Pike and Janna, for example. This will affect Glacial Augment for champions like Alistar, Rakan, if you're going tank Rakan, Thresh as well. All these tank supports, Leona, Nautilus, all these tank supports are building a lot of bonus health. You're not going to be able to slow as much, but to be fair, 0.5% is probably not going to do too much. The big thing is this damage reduction effect, which, as I mentioned already with the Jarvan Ultima, damage reduction is super strong, because just reducing damage in general, especially during the laning phase early on, is super strong. So yeah, that going down by 3% is pretty big, but I still think Glacial Augment will be a very strong rune in general. I still think 12% damage reduction is pretty big. I wonder if this actually stacks on top of Jarvan, for example. So if you use Jarvan Ultimate and also someone Glacial Augments that champion, I wonder if that stacks up. It probably doesn't stack, to be honest with you. That'd be kind of crazy if it stacks. So you got like Jarvan's Ultimate with the damage reduction, and then you also have the damage reduction with Glacial Augment. Interesting. We'll have to definitely test it out. But yeah, that's everything for the first look for Wild Rift patch 4.3b. Few exciting changes. As I mentioned, every single change is a buff. Every single change is a buff, which I'm quite excited about. There's no nerfs. They're just trying to bring more champions into the meta rather than nerfing champions that are really strong right now, which there are a few champions that I think are a little bit overtuned. But yeah, really nice overall. Really nice patch. Lots of buffs. Lots of nice changes, so we'll have to see definitely how that affects things this week for Wild Rift. So hopefully you enjoyed this rundown, the little breakdown for Wild Rift first look for patch 4.3b. As I mentioned already, this patch will be coming out this week, most likely on Thursday EU time, which will be Wednesday for, you know, America time. So yeah, really excited about it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.